Hello, YouTube. I have tried to refrain from going on rants about the morality in books of the Hebrew Bible, but if there is a book that deserves open scorn, it is the book of Esther. So let's get started. At the beginning, there's a Persian king whose name is Ahasuerus, and he's holding a 180-day feast. And he asks 7 eunuchs to bring his queen Vashti to him. See, that they're eunuchs because you can't trust a heterosexual man who hasn't been castrated to keep his hands to himself. Queen Vashti refuses to appear. And because of this, a sage in the king's court whose name is Memucan believes that this will cause wives everywhere to rebel against their husbands. So he convinces Ahasuerus to send a letter throughout all of the provinces declaring male household dictatorship. Ahasuerus then commands that young virgins be sought and brought into his harem under the custody of the eunuch Hegai. The girls who are brought into the harem sleep with Ahasuerus. They're taken back to the harem, and they're not called again unless he delighted in the girl, and she would be summoned by name. The girl who gets him off most effectively will be made queen instead of Vashti. What do you think it's referring to when it talks about the king being pleased by them? However, the other girl's virginity, their only value as a piece of man's property, had been taken from them. Of course, that doesn't matter. Esther, who's a Jewish girl, who was brought up by her cousin Mordecai because she's an orphan, she doesn't have any parents, she was taken into the harem after this had been going on for 4 years. That's a pretty sweet deal if you're the king, being able to sleep with a different girl every day for 4 years. Of course, if they're virgins, that may make it a little uncomfortable. Of course, Esther pleased Ahasuerus, and she was advanced to the best place of the harem. But she didn't reveal her people because Mordecai asked her not to tell. Why did he ask her not to tell? Because non-Persian women were not allowed to become the king's queen. Mordecai was asking her to bear false witness in order to ascend to a place of political influence. And coincidentally, Ahasuerus loved Esther more than all the other women. She won his favor and was made queen. How did she win his favor? By giving him favors. Mordecai coincidentally overhears an assassination plot, who tells it to Esther, who tells it to Ahasuerus. And the conspirators are hung on a tree. What that's really talking about is, after being killed, their bodies are impaled on a tree in order to be a public spectacle. And then this guy named Haman, he's promoted to the head of the king's officials. And other officials gave homage to Haman, but Mordecai didn't. And the king's servants told Haman about Mordecai, who just happened to reveal that he was a Jew to these servants. So he can't even follow his own advice that he's given to Esther. And because of this, Haman gets all vainglorious and decides to destroy all the Jews. And he cast a lot called Pur for the day and the month when this should happen. And it just so happened to fall on the day before the Passover. Haman tells Ahasuerus that all the Jews are disobeying his laws, and because of this, they should be killed. All because he's pissed off at Mordecai. And Haman mentions that he would pay 10,000 talents of silver into the king's treasury. That's an equivalent to over $100 million. So Ahasuerus goes ahead with it. Sure thing, dude. He decides to go ahead with the genocide of the entire Jewish people based upon the hearsay of a single man. If all the other Persian kings were as much of a big fat fail whale as Ahasuerus was, no matter their empire ended up being conquered. So Mordecai went into the entrance of the king's gate in ashes and sackcloth, and in every province the Jews did the same. Wouldn't that blow their cover? How would you know that they're Jews otherwise? And of course, Esther thought of this. She found out that, Mordecai's weeping in sackcloth and ashes, and she sent clothes to him, but he wouldn't take them. And then she sends a eunuch named Hathach to Mordecai in order to find out what's going on. And Mordecai tells Hathach about Haman's scheme to get all the Jews killed. And then Esther mentions to this eunuch that anyone who goes into the king's inner court without being summoned will be put to death unless the king holds out his golden scepter. And word of this gets back to Mordecai, and then he entraps her in the following. Don't think you'll escape the fate of the other Jews. If you don't help us, help will come from somewhere else, and you and your father's family will die. What family? She's an orphan. She doesn't have any parents. But let's keep going. Esther asks Mordecai to hold a fast for 3 days and that she will risk death by going to the king. But coincidentally, she wins the king's favor. No problem, man. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any more story. So the king asks Esther, what is your request? It shall be given you even to the half of my kingdom. Now, coincidentally, that sounds really similar to what Herod said to Herodias' daughter in Mark 6:23. Esther asks that Ahasuerus and Haman will attend a banquet that will be happening that day. So they go to the banquet, and Ahasuerus asks the same thing. What is your request? And Esther asks that Ahasuerus and Haman attend a banquet the following day. Why is there another banquet the following day? Because the story necessitates it. So let's keep going. Haman is going on the way home from this banquet, and he's drunk, and he just happens to see Mordecai, who doesn't show him the proper respect. So Haman throws a hissy fit and then goes home to complain to his wife Zeresh and his friends. And then she and Haman's friends say that he should build a gallows 50 cubits high and tell the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. So, this gallows, which the word for, is tree or wood. So again, it's the kind of thing where somebody's going to be made a public spectacle because their body's going to be impaled on it. It's going to be 50 cubits high. So this is going to be over 70 feet tall. And Haman is going to tell the king to hang Mordecai on it. He can give the king orders. And then, that night after the banquet, King Ahasuerus, he can't sleep, and he's reading his book of records, the Annals, and he's just so happens to be reading about Mordecai when Haman shows up. And then Ahasuerus asks Haman what should be done for the man whom the king wishes to honor, because Ahasuerus found out about the quashed assassination attempt. Haman says that the man should be clothed with a robe that the king has worn, ride a horse the king is ridden, with a royal crown on his head through the open square of the city. And Ahasuerus says, great dude, do this for Mordecai. So he goes ahead and does it.